Hi, students, and welcome to another lesson, part of the BridgeU Bootcamp. Up your game for college and university applications in 6 weeks. Today, I'm going to be going through lesson 4 with you, which is the destination decision. Where do I want to go? This is probably one of the biggest questions that you have occupying your mind at the moment, or probably will be in a couple of years, depending on when you're doing this lesson. But this is a huge question decision that you're going to have to ask yourself. So I hope what I go through with you today provides you with some tools that can help you in making this decision. So before we start, let's make sure that we have everything we need. In this lesson, we will be doing two or three activities. You can do it on the computer if you wish, but if you happen to prefer using pen and paper, grab a few of those, some colors if you wish. Make sure you're sitting comfortably and you're logged onto your BridgeU account. What we'll be covering today is obviously we're going to be talking about destinations. We're going to be talking through the stages and the formula of making good decisions. We're going to go through a way in which that you can lay out your research in a really clear way to help you with this overwhelming process. We're actually going to do some research together as well, going through the country guides on BridgeU. And last but not least, we're going to highlight one other way in which that you can research, one of the many actually, but one of the ways that you could research more about the destination that interests you, which is asking people about their experience. And we'll be doing starbursting as a tool to organize your questions. So, location, location, location. The big question, where do I want to go study? This is obviously a big question for you because it does have huge impact. You're going to be you're going to be living in this place for around 3 to 4 years, maybe even more, depending if you stay on living in this city or country once you've graduated. So I hope what we're going to go through today can be really useful to you. But what I want to highlight is we're probably at all different stages here right now. We've got people who probably really know exactly where they want to go study. Perhaps they had their mom or dad or their sister studying there now, and that's why you want to go and you've been able to visit the campus a few times. Or perhaps you're torn between two places and you really can't make your mind up. Or perhaps you've got no idea at all, which is totally okay. I think actually it's great that you're still not sure, and it means that you're really trying to think what would be best for you. If you're analyzing which one's better or worse, I think that's great because as I mentioned, this is a big decision. So don't rush it. Obviously, don't miss the deadline, but don't rush it. Make sure that you are thinking clearly about where you want to go. So I want to touch upon basically what are some of the stages and processes at which we go through when we make a decision. But most of all, like what can we do to make sure that we're making a good decision? So, what I mean by that is that this isn't a decision that you've made without thinking. The reason why we're going to break it down into 5 different sections is to make sure that you've really thought about where you want to go and how it's going to impact you, because what you don't want to do is make a decision out on a whim. And once that application's been sent, once you've said yes, you're going to feel very committed. Doesn't mean that you can't change your mind and go back a couple steps. Of course that can happen and that's completely fine. But if we want things to go a little bit more smooth sailing, you're going to want to make a good first decision. So the formula here and the process here is broken down into 5 steps. We've got identifying the goal or slash problem, and here the goal is figuring out what country, city, destination is best for you. Number 2, gather the relevant information to weigh up your options. Number 3, consider the consequences of making this decision. Number 4, make your decision. And number 5, evaluate your decision. So let me talk through each of these stages in a bit more detail. So the first one, the goal. So as I mentioned, your goal here could be deciding which country you want to study in. And you might have a date at which this needs to be decided by. I'm not sure if many of you guys have heard of making SMART goals, but I think making things specific, measurable, achievable, and timely are really important, and making SMART goals. And this will help you in creating a deadline for yourself and knowing when this decision needs to be made by, so that you can input the right amount of effort throughout the year or throughout how much time you've got to reach that goal of knowing where you want to go. Number two, gathering information to weigh your options. So I'm sure you've heard this before, but it's best, of course, to get as much information as possible from different sources. Don't just go on one source, one website, just the university website, to figure out, like, oh, could I see myself living here? Could I see myself studying here? It's really important that you get a wide spectrum of different resources to gather up your information. And once you have that information, it's time to weigh up the pros and cons. So, identifying the positives and the negatives of going to this place is really, really powerful, because, and writing it down, visualizing what those positives and negatives are, can really help in understanding and visually preparing yourself for what your experience might be like. And I say visual because it will help you imagine your life there, especially if you don't have the opportunity to actually travel to this destination that you're thinking about studying in. So, step three, consider the consequences. So, when you weigh the pros and cons, you've got to think, well, what would be the impact of my life in this place or in this city? If I've decided to study in the US and I'm living in Hong Kong and that's really far from home, that probably means the frequency at which I get to visit my family or my family get to visit me will have an impact. And that's something to consider if that's obviously something that is important to you. Obviously, maybe studying somewhere where it's really hard for international students to get an extended visa after studying probably means that the likelihood of you working there after you graduate could be really difficult. And that's something that you need to think about, because that will be, that would impact your life after university. And number four, make a decision. So you've got to ask yourself, if I decide on this, will it feel right? And, how do I feel about this decision in the future? And definitely don't be too negative, obviously, but time to kind of be self critical and think about, how would this impact me if I made this choice? And the truth is, you should be feeling quite good about the decision that you've come to, right? You should be excited if you're deciding to study in university in California. That feeling of, and that imagining you being there, that should really excite you, especially once you've done all of that research, because then you can really visualize yourself there. If after this you've decided I might be studying in London, but maybe that thought of being in London and the the weather there, or just like the experience that you've researched into about living there, just doesn't feel right with you, then think about what made you reach that decision. Were you influenced by somebody else? Was it really you that wanted that, or did you feel like someone else influenced you to make that choice? So be critical. Be really try to be quite self-aware. It's a great exercise in order for you to realize at the end that you've made the best decision for yourself. And number five, last but not least, evaluate your decision. So make sure that you did not just use one single source to gather all this information together. And make sure that you're following your intuition. Check up on the time. Is there a deadline at which you need to make this? And have you made a decision maybe too soon? Can you give yourself a couple more weeks? And most importantly, how do you feel? Does this feel like the best decision for you? So, the first activity here is that we're going to start researching. But before we do, let's create a table where you can really clearly lay out all of the important information that you should be researching about universities and destinations. So I've created one here. This is my example. Feel free to copy what I have and add on what you think you feel like you need to know. This table is also a great way for you to have a conversation with whoever the decision maker is in where you're kind of deciding to go, especially the person who's probably paying the school fees. So they'll probably want to know, the average cost of living and the average cost of fees within this particular area. And a good thing for you to be aware of is the kind of and is the cost of living, but also what kind of tests would be required. Do you need to take an English language test? Do you need to sit an SAT or an ACT? Or do you not need to take a test at all? And would you prefer going to university that requires less work in the beginning? So and think about what time you do have available to yourself. Like, can you fit in doing an SAT if you already feel really, tight for time of doing in high school already? Or is it better, like, that you do sit the SAT, but you take a gap year to give yourself that time to do it? So it's really important to, get all of that information out here. And I added weather and culture as kind of like the personality and character fit for you. So, I'm sure you know that weather can really impact like your mood, your happiness, and if but maybe it doesn't. And I think that's an important thing for you to realize. It's self-reflective, it's self-awareness, but it's important to realize like how that's going to impact your experience. And lastly, culture. So, if you're quite self aware, it's good to know that would your personality and character fit with the culture of the place that you're heavily considering to live in? Maybe you're not someone who's very liberal and laid back. So, maybe living in California might not be the best place for you. Or maybe you are, and that really suits the kind of personality and character that you do have, and that would work really well. Another thing that I think could be really useful for you guys to research is the approach to studying within that country or city. So, if you can go into a university undeclared versus like having to go in with a subject already chosen, because that might change and that will influence your experience studying there. So, go ahead, make this table, and once you're done, come back and we'll start doing some research. So now that you got your table ready, we're going to do some research. BridgeU has some extensive country guides that you can use. So I've got them all here just as an example. And I would really stress going on as many as you can. I appreciate that you might not have a lot of time today or tomorrow, but, put in some time just to read through a few of them and have a look, because don't narrow yourself down too soon. You might find that the way that Australia approaches education actually reflects how you like to study really well, and you might have not even known that before. So go ahead, click on one of the on one of the country guides and have a look. Something that I would like to emphasize is once you've read all the relevant information that you're interested in, perhaps in this exercise, let's look at the cost of living or the fees. Fill out that table that you've created with the information that you found. So in this example here, we can go onto the PDF country guides. Here's the one for the UK. Once you open it up, which you can see here, do Command F or Control F just to save a bit of time. And if you're looking for something like cost, click enter once you've typed it in. And here you can see that we're getting the relevant word that you're looking for, and that can help save you a bit of time. So once you've done a bit of research here, come back to me and we'll start on the next activity. So I hope you found that exercise useful, and I hope that you found some interesting information there. And I hope actually that it helped open your mind to thinking about other places that you could go study. So the last thing I want to leave you with is a really, really strong way that you can gather information. And that is by talking to people. You might actually find out by talking to people they know really interesting stuff about the country that you're deciding to go study in or you're considering to study in. And better yet, maybe they've lived there themselves or they've studied in that place. And so, in this exercise, something that I think could be really useful is creating a starbursting diagram. So, with a starbursting diagram, you are able to, identify all of the key things that you should be asking: the who, what, when, how, why, and where. So, when we're doing this, we want to branch out with questions from each edge of the star, as you can see that I've done on the right hand side. I've given some examples. Feel free to use what's there, but it'd be great to come up with some of your own questions, and I'm sure you have some things that I haven't put down there. I put down some example questions on the left hand side which you can have a look at. Feel free to use those as well. But something I want to really emphasize is that people will be sharing their experience, and don't forget there are a lot of factors that influence their time living in this place, and perhaps they only live there for 6 months, compared to someone who lived there for 10 years. They would probably have a bit more of an understanding of the culture of that place. Um, and people are giving you their opinion, they're telling you their experience. So that's going to be very different to yours. You know, it's great to get information and insight of what they had experienced, because some of it would be relatable to you, but don't forget you're the person that has to live there. If that culture suited them really well, you know, perhaps there's someone who was really involved in theater and arts and they went to go study in LA, but and they loved their time there because of that. You know, that you need to take into account that if you're someone that's much more interested probably in sports and athletics, and this town didn't seem to be strong with that culture, that's something you should really consider. But it's great to just gather information from real examples, real stories, and their opinion, and take what they're saying, like take in what they're saying, but don't take too much to heart. That's something that I would like to emphasize here. But use this diagram, you know, either get creative, grab some pens, color pens, and some paper, and get this going. Think about who you want to ask, you know, whether it's your parents' friends, or maybe like your friends' siblings. You know, a lot of them might actually be at university at the moment, and they'd be really relevant to ask. So get curious, start thinking about who you can connect with, and yeah, I hope this activity can be really useful to you guys. Last but not least, are you guys on TikTok? Because BridgeU has a TikTok page, and if you feel comfortable, feel free to share your starbursting diagram using our hashtag. And of course, thank you very much for listening. I hope that what you learned today and the tools that I've shared with you can help you feel more confident and just more structured in the research process of your of making this decision. As I just want to, you know, take away, this is a big decision. Don't rush this, and take your time. You're going to be spending 3 to 4 years in this place, and perhaps even longer if you decide to work there after or just stay after. So this is a big choice, and yeah, I wish you all the best of luck, and yeah, enjoy. Thank you very much. Before you go, college counselor Mr. Turner from Dwight School Dubai has some fantastic insight he'd like to share with you.
Hey, Nicola, thanks so much for this opportunity. Everybody, my name is David Turner. I'm the college counselor. I'm a college counselor at the Dwight School in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. I'm also the owner of A-List, which is a very good SAT and ACT test preparation company, so look us up. Today I want to talk about the destination decision. Now, you just finished a fantastic deck that's talking about how important it is to be critically self-reflective. Being critically self-reflective has two parts to it that I can see. One is who you are. Who you are is what you just learned about. Who you are is, you know, how important is it for you to go to a huge school with 50,000 plus students like my daughter? She wants to go to UCLA or NYU because she wants the whole downtown vibe. Or, you know, are you someone that it's probably better for you to go to a smaller, more private school where you actually get to know more people and be part of a more cohesive community? Does cold weather appeal to you? For some people it mightn't. For some people who have a snowboard, well, that's the way they want to go. So when you answer those kinds of big questions, you're taking a minute to be critically self-reflective, and that is super important. When you, as a college counselor, one of the things that we like to do is we like to put ownership on you. I can't possibly tell you where you're going to fit in best, but by using platforms like BridgeU, you know, we can give you the opportunity to build a profile in the program. And that's where it's going to start asking you questions like, well, where do you want to go to school? Do you want to go to school in the UK or Canada or the US or Australia? It'll also ask you, well, is the East Coast more important or is the West Coast more important? Again, class sizes and all of those kinds of choices. So by being that kind of reflective person, you're really onboarding what's important to you. You're going to spend 4-5 years there. Hopefully you'll get a career or a job as well. Which brings me to my second point. The other thing that I like to do is I like to get my students to push out a little bit. Okay, I'm the navigator, I'm the college counselor, so I'm the guy that's going to bring you from high school to college to career. So one of the things I like to do is get my students to start working on the career tools, to start really getting a closer look at populating that universe of possibilities. If you tell me, if you come to me and say, hey, Mr. Turner, I want to be a lawyer or I want to be an engineer. Well, guys, that's a huge umbrella to start exploring. So using platforms like BridgeU, you can start to really understand, well, if I want to be an engineer, well, what does that mean? And what kind of jobs can I look for in that particular field of interest? By being critically self-reflective, what you're really doing is you're taking a beat to push back and to really ascertain what things are important to you. You're also being smart enough to look at the future to see what kinds of overlap opportunities you can create. Hey everybody, it's been great to speak to you for the short time that I did. I wish you the very best. It's a wonderful opportunity, and I know as a college counselor, I'm super, super excited. Come and see us. That's what we do. Thank you so much.